Hey everybody, how are y'all doing? This is a new scan. It's it's a lot of polygons. I told y'all it's a lot. It's quite a bit. Um, I normally would smooth this out with a smoothing thing to kind of give you an idea how that would look. It's add deform, smooth, and you got to kind of go, mess with the numbers till you get it like you want it. Um, the more the factor, it's the strength of the modifier effect. The modifier, basically, you can repeat it. If, say, one time wasn't enough at 0.5 strength, then you can say do 25 times, and you see it got a little smoother. If you went to 100, and it even smoother. But you don't want to get it too smooth, and you start losing quality. Now, the strength of it, right? So you could have 100 times, but only at 0.1 strength. Or you could say at 1 strength, 2 strength. So you start to see how you start to lose quality. You start to lose like the finer details. So what I'll usually do is just mess around a bit, get it kind of where I want it. I guess I will go ahead and apply it. Let me see if 50 looks okay. 50 and 1. Yeah, I think that'll be alright. Alright, so let's apply it. Now what I'm going to do is export this as an OBJ onto the desktop, but I want to clear out some of that stuff first. We're not using that. So we'll go to edit mode. If you're going to erase stuff like this, turn on X-ray mode so you can get stuff in the front and the back. So you don't have to worry about missing anything. It'll get it all. I'll take a lasso and just delete the vertices. And like back here, this stuff here, that's not getting used. Or that. So it's like clean up. You're cleaning up the extra garbage. You can turn the balls off if that makes it easier. It does make it easier. And say like this here, I could get really close and be more precise how I do it. If I wanted to really get it close, I could always just cut a new road basically. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is cut a new path so it breaks closer to the ear. I'm not going to do that. What I'll end up doing is probably after it comes back from being redone, I'll probably just kind of fold those around back a bit. Now, ideally, you have someone take your picture that knows how to take pictures intended for making things like this. Which I did not have here. No, I got someone that says, you need to hurry up. I got things to do. Yeah, see, I cut that kind of close. See, that's what the thing is. You don't want to get too close. You can get it cleaner later. Don't worry about it right now, really. So let's export it as OBJ and stick that on the desktop. We don't have to worry about the texture. That's why I always delete the camera and the light. That way it's not something that's also got to be considered. Just delete it. You don't need it. Now we'll go to Meshroom, import the OBJ, but I cleared all this stuff out. So we need to add a mesh post-processing decimate that reduces the poly, and mesh post-processing resampling. So one will lower the poly count, the other will resample the mesh so it's got good topography. Bad topography don't bend well or deform well because it's too fragmented. Like nothing's even. It always does better if you got stuff that's kind of like a grid than if you got stuff that looks like a grid with many fractures in it. Those don't bend good. So the decimate here, what you got to do is point to where the mesh is at, which is on the desktop. So I should be able to get the path pretty easily. Yeah. Copy as path. Of course, you got to take the quotes out. And that tells it where the mesh is, and the simplification factor will be like 0.05. Mesh resampling will also do point. Well, we'll do that 0.05 also. You can always redo it. You know, if it doesn't look good to you, just redo it. If it's too, maybe you got too few polys, and it don't look as good as it could. Idea is to get it as low as you can, but still look good. So that's why you have to bake it after you do it. You bake from the high polygon model to the low polygon model, with the hopes that the normal mapping and the other mapping will make it look good. What's the deal? Oh, yeah, you got to connect that to that. That's what the deal is. But here's what the Decimate did. So we can pull this up and show you this one now. So this is what, God dog, this damn thing. It's a booger to navigate in. Look at the wireframe. Now, did you see what it looked like in Blender? It was far more than that. Now, the resampling will take it down even farther. And you can just double click on them if you want to see them, what the resampled version looks like. That's kind of good, but it's also kind of low. I mean, it could be a little better, a little more than that. So we'll do like, I don't know, let's try 0.1. Remember, it's not going to kill your performance because it's not that many polys. It looks like a lot, but it's not. Wait. Not enough to hurt anyone's performance, I wouldn't think. Guess it depends on your system, but most folks it shouldn't matter. Let's do it this way. Let's do this one 0.1 and this one also 0.1. Anytime you render something in here, that's good. That's fine. Anytime you render something in here, if you go to the last thing, whatever, it tells you where tells you the top of the input mesh. If there's an input mesh, and at the bottom it tells you where it got saved to. I'll usually just copy this to the clipboard so it's easy to get to. And I'll import it in by just pasting it. There it is. So we import it in, and now you see you got two of the exact same thing, but one's low poly. So we got the low poly mesh, and then we got the high poly mesh. So we want to copy those details into our new one. Because if you just decimate an object, you just reduce the poly count. if you just reduce the poly count, it's not going to look good. I can give you an example of that. Let's see here. So we take that and we just do a decimate. And we do about around the same ratio. Was it 0.05? Sometimes you get lucky. See, that's starting off at 1,000,000, so we're taking it down to about 50,000 or so. And you see? Do you see it? You see that, don't you? Hope you do. But that's terrible. It looks like a bunch of diamonds just growing on the skin. It's all crazy looking. And if you take it down even farther, yeah, you see? Now that is there about around the poly count of the one we just did in Meshroom, but it's got bad topography. You see how that all is all different. These triangles are all different shapes and sizes. You got some that are long and skinny, and some that are just normal looking, and some that are just crazy looking. You know. Now you look at the mesh that we imported back in. Everything's almost exactly even. That's good topography. There's like videos you can watch on just topography and how to improve yours. And I probably could do for watch another few of them. But that's what Meshroom does, opposed to Blender. Blender may can resample it too, but yeah, you don't want to use it. Oh, that's just terrible. Let's undo that. So, not sure what that one was. So we'll call this high poly. Just high for high poly, and the other one's is the low poly. Now, if you open this up and you were to say, all right, I want to lay that out flat so I can look at all the texture on like a flat plane. Well, if you're going to cut that in half, I mean, if you're going to lay that flat, if you lay it flat like that, you got parts that don't have like cuts in them, so it's going to make it difficult to lay out all them flaps without really stretching a lot of stuff. So what you do is you cut seams. You cut seams by going into edit mode and you picking the vertices of it. So like you pick that vertice and you say, hold down, is it control or shift? Control, hold down control, and you'll see it cut that all the way across there and into there. And let's see if we can get it to go kind of along that path. That's good enough. Well, no, it ain't. I want to get that a little closer to the ear. There we go. I actually got a scar there, so that'll kind of work out. Alright, so if we mark that as a seam, UV mark seam, and when we hit A to select all and we unwrap this, you got to unwrap it so it knows the UV mapping for that. UV unwrap. Now if we go to UV editor, you'll see that two pieces that I just cut, and they lay pretty good except for here and there and there and there. Those areas did not unwrap well. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. You try to get it perfect, but you know it's not going to happen. Now we need to also, in object mode, shade that smooth. Now we're ready to bake. But to bake, change the render engine here to cycles, and I'll use GPU. I'll only do about 128 samples, and you know there's a distance between, if we get up real close, there's a distance between the low poly and the high poly. Not much. I mean, it's very low, short distance. It's not far at all. That distance you will need to account for. Like 0.1, you know, it's not much. What you want to do when you go to your bake tab is remember that number. So you go up to here. Once you got in cycles, go up to here and you scroll down to bake. And you can't bake in Eevee. If you don't see bake, then you didn't change your render engine. Combined, no, we're going to do diffuse without the lighting and indirect lighting. So it's just going to get the color information from that texture, not extra influences by baked in lighting or anything like that. And since we're baking from one to the other, we go from that to that. You're going to pick selected to active, open that tab, and the first one you always select is the high poly model, and the last one that you select is the low. So you'll pick the high poly model, and then you'll hold shift and pick the low poly model by finding, I hit enter, I didn't hit shift. Hold shift. Now, you see I got them both, but it got this one last. And now you can't do it up here for some reason. I don't know. It does something different. I don't know what it does, but it does something different. It doesn't work. Or it didn't used to work. Maybe it does now, but I ain't tried it in a while. So that's how you select them, right? If you have a problems getting your high poly model to select, you can always go to your high poly model and go into here, and in viewport display tell it to show you bounding box only. So you can pick the bounding box, hold shift, pick your low poly model, and it works a lot better. Go to shading up here, and you may have a texture in here waiting on you. You may not. If you don't, all you got to do is just say new. I'll just delete it. So the low poly one here, we just need to make a new material. And that material will be a principal BSDF. And you would add an output if you want to see the preview of it, what it did. And on your model, you would connect that BDSF to surface. Now, we don't have a texture yet. That's what we got to bake. So we'll add a texture input, image texture in the texture slot there. And we'll say new, and we'll do 4K. Or maybe that's, I don't know, 4096 by 4096. We don't need an alpha channel. And we'll say new image. Now, with this selected here, these are still selected. We didn't change any of that. You go over to here and bake that. You'll get the preview appear. This is such a pain in the ass. You get the preview here. Baking diffuse. So that number, I said, remember, that 0.1 whatever, we'll put it here, but we'll just put 1. That way we know we got it. And then we just bake. It's that easy. And you'll get your texture here that will map onto your low poly model. Now you see how why you had to unwrap the UV so Blender knows where those are located on here. Boy, that's an ugly thing. You know what? You can make that a mouse pad. Yeah. That would be a pretty good one. Halloween time? Yeah, man. Look in the merch store for that one. That'd be crazy. Alright, so if you want to see it, on it, just connect it. Color to base color. So that's a low poly model. And you can see, you don't see all that fragmentation and stuff like you did in Blender. It's a nice way of doing it. Now, compared to the high poly model, I'll turn that back off to where we can see it again. textured. That's the high poly model, low poly model. High, low. Damn near perfect, ain't it? And this one's only a few thousand polys. Now we can do it again. We can bake some other maps. I'll probably just only end up using that one, but if I'm doing really detailed stuff like rocks and things and I need that extra detail, I'll bake a normal mapping, an ambient occlusion mapping, a roughness mapping. So let's do the normals. We'll add a texture image just like before, and we'll say new 4096 by 4096. And here we'll change this to linear. This is the color space. The base color thing, the diffuse will be RGB, but any roughness, ambient occlusion, or normal mapping, we'll use linear, or I use linear. Now that's in the wrong goddamn one. I'm picking the wrong one, folks. This is the one for the high poly. Yeah, I add it to this one, not the other one. Depending on which one you pick, shows you which material's in here, but yeah, you gotta be careful. You can overwrite the material. That's the one material would basically itself, and it messes it up. Alright, linear. Now we're gonna bake normals this time. Everything looks alright. Let's bake it. Oops, I accidentally unclicked that shit. I hope it don't mess it up. Yeah, that'll make a hell of a lot of difference. Let's see where the mesh is messed up though. It must be kind of like under the folds and shit where that stuff I didn't delete. It looks alright. Now you just have to save the texture because it's not going into Beam from here. You have to save it separately and put it in Beam in the material editor. But we can look at the preview and see what it's actually doing to the model and give you an idea how the game's shader will look when you got it in there. So you'll add a vector normal map. You'll put that there. And where it's going to do, you're going to connect this one, the one you just baked here. You're going to connect the normal to the color and then the normal to the normal. And now if I give that less or more, you can see what exactly it captured. See, I don't really want to do that because it's capturing the little bit of stuff that wasn't really smoothed out. And if it's smoothed out looking, then really you're wasting your time baking that because there's no point. You're just baking it not smooth again. So that's something to consider. So no, we don't want to bake it. We're not going to bake the other maps either. Got too much other stuff to do than bake all these maps. We really don't need them. We can just do this and be fine. So we can delete our high poly model. We can take our low poly model, go back to layout mode, and say, let's go ahead and save this. So save it as. I got this folder on the desktop that I've been saving scans to. So it'll get saved there, but I want to make it extra sure that I get the texture saved. And don't forget, like I almost just forgot. I did just about forget to save them. You bake them, you got to save them, you know, or they're not getting saved. You'll leave here and not realize you ain't got your textures, you know. Save as, and I'll just stick it in there with the others. Let's see, I'll call this Whatever you can remember, whatever works for you. And low, the high poly, which was that one. Alright, looks fine. Now, let's go to layout and let me think for a minute. But that's really it. And the same thing works for anything you make in Meshroom. Rocks, whatever you scan, you can do that. I'm going to stop the video here. And I'm going to work on this a little bit more. I got some other things to do too. But since I got him low poly now, it'd be easier to work on the J-beam part of it, because this will be even. If I wanted to talk, it'd be even easier to cut the mouth open with a lower poly model than trying to do it with a high poly. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make it open its jaw, but look not like a puppet when it does it, to look more natural. So that's gonna be like kind of experimental stuff, but I guess I could record it, post it like in a time lapse or something. But that's it for this one. I hope you got something out of it. It's not as complicated as it looks. You'll see once you start doing it, you'll be like, oh man. You'll be thinking, why don't everybody just go outside and make like all these damn things with Meshroom, that these billions of polys, trillions of polys, however many there are, and just make them all low poly and bake all that stuff into them and make them all look real, like beyond nanite capability in Ultima Unreal 5 engine. Why don't people do that? Well, shit takes a long time, man. Not only does it take a long time for Meshroom to make something like on an i9 10850 with a 4080, it takes sometimes up to an hour to do real detailed stuff. And man, you talking about doing a whole lot of stuff for a whole room, like a whole room of a house. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. What I find when I send stuff to Meshroom, if I go over like 150 pictures, like I sent like 275 a few days ago, it made the best damn scan in the world, but it did not make a damn single texture. All the textures were black for some reason. So I don't know if it's system memory, GPU memory, I don't know what memory. It run out of something because it didn't have enough left to do it. I thought, what a damn waste of time. I let that thing render all night. Got up the next morning thinking I'm going to have a perfect scan. That damn thing wasn't even finished right. It didn't even do it right. I couldn't fix it either. So I think that it's definitely a memory hog thing, Meshroom. Anytime you run anything in it that's got texturing, especially the 16K texturing, that shit takes a lot of room. Alright folks, we'll be getting on this one soon and getting him prepared to explode. So I got a lot of the other stuff made for it. I just got to get them combined into one thing. And since the guy wanted this thing sitting in a car, you know, I had to consider that when I was making the other ones. Like, well, I only can do so much to this one, or I'm going to have to redo a lot because he's not in the right pose. So I kind of used the other one to make like the inside of the head stuff and the eyeball and stuff like that. But to be completely honest, I'm probably going to redo that again with this newer head, because I always like to redo things and make it better than the last time. But anyways, y'all have a good one. We'll see you soon.